you got to trust yourself and trust your collective team to be like, yep, we're all in on this. This feels great, right? And it's just this living, breathing organism.
Better too fast than too slow. That's what I say.
Hey, welcome back to The Record Process. This week's episode is a special one because we are welcoming Shane Told, vocalist of the band Silverstein and creator of the incredible podcast Lead Singer Syndrome. Shane has been deeply ingrained in the world of writing, recording, and touring for over 2 decades now, and we wanted to have him share some of those experiences as they relate to the record that many fans agree cemented the band's importance in the scene early on in their career. We chatted at length with Shane about Silverstein's 2005 album Discovering the Waterfront, which hit number 3 on the Billboard Independent Album charts and has sold a staggering 500,000 copies in the 15 years since its release. So much went into the making of this record, from the studios it was tracked at to how they ended up working with legendary producer Cameron Webb at the last minute. So let's get right into it after this quick note about our sponsor. DistroKid is the most affordable service for independent artists to distribute their music to all streaming platforms, and it comes filled with a suite of tools to help you elevate your career. DistroKid not only allows you to spread your music across the streaming ecosystem, and yes, that includes TikTok, but it also helps you share your story with labels via the Upstream tool. You can engage your fan base using its text messaging feature and even create unique lyric videos. Record Process listeners now have a chance to get 30% off the first year of their membership at DistroKid. Just head down to the show notes and sign up using our affiliate link. We can't wait to hear what you've been working on, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at TrueLevelStudio.com/The Record Process and share your release plans with us for the upcoming year. So I wanted to give a huge shout out to Sheet Happens Publishing. They're a company that works directly with artists to create accurate and immersive tab books, vinyl, and other merch that allows fans to get one step closer to perfecting the soundtrack to their lives. I recently had the pleasure of putting together a book with them for my band The Wonder Years, and trust me, they are incredibly thorough and dedicated to artist-approved accuracy in all of these books. Every tab book comes with the accompanying guitar profiles, which is very cool, allowing you to jump right into playing along with your favorites. Head over to sheethappenpublishing.com to check out all of their offerings, and be sure to enter the code TRP15 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. That's sheethappenpublishing.com, promo code TRP15. So go check out their amazing library of books, and happy shredding, my fellow guitarists. And now, here's our interview. Shane Told, welcome to The Record Process. Thanks for coming on, buddy. How are you?
Hey, I'm really good. Thank you for having me. I know we've already been talking for like 20 minutes, so I'm like warmed up. I'm like I'm ready to jump in, man. I'm feeling great.
I know, ready to go. See, you just gave him a peek behind the curtain. You broke the fourth wall. See, already, yes, we have been catching up.
Yeah.
Truth be told, there's a history there. I love you, the Silverstein guys, incredible. So this was going to be so much fun to chat about this record, specifically Discovering the Waterfront, and a real throwback to you. So we'll see what you can remember. See if I can jog your memory from some things that that I dug up and found, and have some fun with it in the process, and and see why how it turned out the way it did, which clearly has done well by y'all, because people friggin' love this record, and it's a great one, and for good reason. The first thing I wanted to kind of get into, so this was the band's second record, right?
Yeah.
And the first record it came out in 2003. This record came out in 2005. So it was like you hit the ground running, and you're on Victory Records, in a very Victory Records era, like heavy era too. So this was like the heyday of those like Victory Records samplers that were hitting high schools and Hot Topics so fucking hard. And I'm sure y'all were all over that. So, and I've got a slew of questions, but the first thing that I wanted to kind of break into is how did that, the expectations of that first album and hitting as hard as it did and kind of diving right in with everything in that time period. I mean, that's a quick turnaround, man. They say you got 18 years to write your first record and then 18 months to write your second, kind of thing. This is literally exactly that. So talk to me about that and what the mindset was going into that second record.
Yeah. It's a great question. We had, a couple of demos recorded, and one was like good enough that we sent some songs to some labels, and, we didn't have like a ton of interest, a few labels, were interested, but Victory was very interested. And like, I couldn't even believe they'd got the package yet, and they were calling us on the phone. So that was like pretty crazy. And, we got signed pretty quickly. And, I want to say like like Tony from Victory called us in maybe July of 2002, and our record was out in May of 2003. So, we negotiated the deal. We'd finished the rest of the songs. I mean, a lot of them were like old songs, like you said, 18 years of songs.
Yeah. You had some lying around.
Yeah. And then we went in the studio and we just recorded. We recorded with the guy that did our demo.
And who was that?
His name's Justin Coop.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So he's was a local producer. He worked with Grade, was a big local band that was also on Victory. Kind of our heroes, hometown heroes. And not a ton else he'd really done, but he knew how to use autotune. So that was important, because at that time, I don't know where we would have been if we didn't have the autotune plugging. And this wasn't like fancy autotune that we use today, like where you have a grid and you move the notes like with Melodyne and all that. Like this was like the box is on or the box is off, And like it was, that's literally how we did the demo and the first record. And to be honest, the first record, we had no idea what the hell we were doing. And I think you can tell. So, we put this record out, and we didn't have very high expectations. I remember we just heard when we were recording that record that Taking Back Sunday had sold 100,000 copies. And it was like a big deal. And I remember we made a deal with Justin that if we just ever sold 100,000 copies, we'd like buy him this like crazy amp or whatever that we were using in the studio. Of course, we did sell well over 100,000 copies, and then we were like, we don't have any money to buy you a fucking amp. You know what I mean? We thought we'd be rich if we sold that many.
Oh my God, I love it. What kind of amp was it?
It was a VHT Pitbull. That's what it was that we used. Most of the guitars were VHT on that record. So anyway, I know I'm talking about the first record, but it does kind of rope into how the second album, Discovering the Waterfront, kind of came to be. So we put the record out, and nobody wanted to take us on tour, and everyone hated us, and Alternative Press gave us half a star, and then Victory pulled the review, and it was always a whole thing. So we didn't come out of the gate really firing, but over we toured pretty hard. We'd all quit our jobs and quit school and everything to do it. So we were like, well, we might as well play every show we can get. And we did. And, kids started buying the records, and, this record started selling more and more. And until, we were in a pretty big position where we were able to, actually like start headlining, 500 cap rooms and selling them out and that kind of thing. And, then it kind of came time like, okay, well, our first record's not that good. Like we're probably a better band than our record is. So maybe we should think about getting onto LP2. And we didn't really know, who to record with. We didn't want to record with the same guy. We wanted to kind of, there's a bunch of people we'd met and we'd wanted to work with. And then we got a phone call from a guy called David Bendith, who I hadn't heard of at the time. I didn't know who he was. I knew I found out he was Canadian, and that he had a studio in New Jersey, and that he recorded this Breaking Benjamin record. So he just started calling me and telling me he wanted to do our record and all this stuff. And he would always call strange times, and I'd be like, it was a weird time. And
it feels like a thing where he would call it strange times. It feels like if it was now, he would be like FaceTiming you at late hours of the night. I know some producers like that.
I mean, it was probably not his fault, but I guess I don't know if I had a cell phone yet at that time. But I remember I was like spending a lot of time at my girlfriend's house, so he was like calling her house, like,
oh,
and I think he thought it was my number, but I told him it wasn't like a few times. It
had
doesn't
no
matter.
idea.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So I got a bit of a weird vibe from him, and he like forced me to buy the Breaking Benjamin album because he wanted me to hear.
He didn't even give it to you?
Well, I don't know. He's like, go to the store tomorrow and buy the record. I was like, okay, man. And then I didn't. Then he called me. He's like, did you get the record?
Oh, man.
I was like, no. He's like, fuck. In those times, like $20 for a CD was like, dude, that's like 4 lunches, you know?
Yeah.
But
the Wall, you're paying like $22 for the extra upcharge on that sticker. Right. If anybody even, I mean, I'm sure if anybody listening remembers The Wall and or ever bought, they were these things called CDs that were
exactly right.
Whatever. It doesn't, it doesn't matter, man. But that's so crazy. I mean, so, and I love this too, because looking up this whole story and realizing that I found out about this, and then I was like, wait a second. Okay. Like, what was Bendith doing back at that point? Dude, I love the fact, I mean, clearly it worked out, but I love that, yeah, it's like that was the period where Breaking Benjamin was in, and he had like just done like shit with Killswitch Engage, that band Il Nino, and the one, like, I will not let this escape this conversation because I didn't know this either, but one of my favorite like late 90s, early 2000s one-hit wonders, Vertical Horizon, he did like 3 songs with them, but a slew of it. And just to say that then, I mean, he went on like post after that, like to do records with a lot of other bands in our world too, like Hawthorne Heights, As I Lay Dying, Clutch. He did that Red Jumpsuit Apparatus record that got pushed real hard. So it's like he was very clearly like in that mix. So it's no surprise that he like heard the first record that you guys did and were like, oh shit, this band. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that all kind of happened right after, I guess, you know? So I guess he kind of found out about our scene, but you know, at the time, the last thing I wanted was our record to sound like Breaking Benjamin. And no offense to Breaking Benjamin, they're a great band, but I mean, especially at that time, like we were not interested in any sort of like anything that could be classified as nu metal whatsoever. You know what I mean? So we were looking for somebody that was just more in the punk world or had made, you know, emo records or whatever that we liked. So we were a little iffy on Bendith, but we knew he was like a big name. So we were going to do the record with him. We were going to go down to New Jersey and do the record with him. And it was like pretty much a done deal. Then he couldn't do it. So we were like, okay, well, that's a big deal. Like, if you can't do it, what do you mean? He's like, well, I know this guy in London, Ontario that can like record it and I'll like mix it and I'll like executive produce it, like whatever that means. And, you know, everything. So we went to London and we met up with this guy and we just didn't vibe with him. Like, honestly, it was nothing personal. Like, I'm sure he's a great producer, but we just like, it's tough when you're like bringing up something like, oh yeah, like Taking Back Sunday, and he's like never heard of them. So it's like, okay, if you don't know like at all what our world is doing, like I'm sure you're probably fine at recording stuff, but we still felt like we needed someone really to help us like steer the ship because none of us really knew what we were doing, you know? So we ended up firing Bendith essentially. We went on our first overseas tour to the UK with it was with Under Oath and this band called The Hurt Process. And this is really, I can't believe this time frame too. This is like crazy to me. This is January of 2005. Okay. So we don't have a producer. We haven't even finished the songs or anything. And one of the members of the band, The Hurt Process, had done a record with Cameron Webb. He kind of said like, oh, Cameron Webb's like awesome. You should work with him. I said, oh, well, what has he done? And he mentioned that he'd done this record by this band called Park. They're like a Chicago, I don't know, emo-y band. We all love this record. Like we would listen to it in the van all the time and we loved the way it sounded. So we were like, okay, like, I don't know, maybe, sure. And he just like picked up his phone and called Cameron and was like, hey, yeah, would you be interested in working with this band or whatever? It was like literally that casual. And then we just booked it. And we booked it for like March. Like, or something like that. Like it was like not even 8 weeks later, we were in the studio recording with Cameron. I mean, it was crazy how fast that all happened. The record was done like in May and it came out in August.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying too. I was like, the turnaround time alone is normally like, I mean, they were at, dude, Tony at Victor working overtime, doing something. We won't get into that whole can of worms, but like that turnaround time alone was just nuts. and how serendipitous all of that was. That's, dude, I love that there are like even more layers to that whole thing with David, and how things just like worked out like that through the grace of like, hey, it's kind of this word of mouth thing where it's not always a resume. We kind of get on this sometimes a lot too. And I actually just like was having another conversation about the same kind of thing where it's like, you need somebody to be able to like talk kind of in terms of like referential, like taste, right? You know, to be like, you mentioned, it's like, if you drop, a record by the band that's pretty much spearheading a genre at that time point, you know, and a certain sect of the scene, and it's not even on the radar. It's like, that's already a thing, maybe more so than like, hey, you can maybe engineer circles around these people, whatever, like you have like big rock radio chops, but like we need somebody that can sew both of these worlds together, right? And then you find it through another band that you happen to be on tour with that says, oh, dude, here you go. This person that maybe seemingly was not necessarily on your radar, even though had made records that you loved, right? And I love that too. I mean, it's kind of the same way we've done, like as you know, like done a lot of records with Steve Evitts. That's kind of the same way that came onto our radar because we weren't necessarily looking, but then we looked at the discography and like, oh, this really mirrors. And then you have the conversation where it's like, oh, you guys are just assholes from Philly, huh? And we're like, yeah, wow, we're gonna get along. Okay, you're from Jersey, you get it. But it's beautiful like that. And then you found such a great home with Cameron, and dude, I mean, and then you're literally just off and running into this. But I want to back up a little bit too, because that UK tour right before that, so you had to be writing a ton in that period then too, right? Like,
we had a couple songs, but like honestly, not that much. Like I remember we had "Smile in Your Sleep" pretty much done. That might have been the first song we wrote for Discovering the Waterfront. And I had kind of like the melodies worked out. Like I knew what I was going to do. And, Long Flight, I was like writing some of the words on the flight. Like I remember doing that, but I think it wasn't until really like we got home after that tour and we had like a month, maybe I want to say, really to like finish writing the songs, and we demoed them out a little, like some of them at least. And, it was really, really fast. And I would never do that today. Like I would never put myself in that way, but we didn't know anything else. Like that was just what it was. Like, okay, yeah, how long from when we deliver the record can the record come out? And it was like 3 months. And we're like, 3 months, that's forever. It's like, now it's like you can't get vinyl pressed in a year, So it's things are a lot different now, so it's kind of funny thinking back, but I don't know, man. We were working on it all the time, and it didn't seem that strange that we would get home and be like, okay, we got 4 weeks to finish the record. Okay, cool.
What were those like demos looking like? Were they just guitar? Were they like full fleshed out? Like what were the demos?
We had a local producer, a good friend of mine. His name was Scott Comer, and he recorded some stuff. I mean, he did the first Boys Night Out record, and he'd done some other good stuff. So we just went in with him, and we did it properly, like shitty properly. Like we recorded actual drums, and we laid down like stereo guitars, and we had like a bass for it, and then I kind of worked at the vocals. I don't know if I finished the vocals on like all the demos, but I had most of them done, because at that time it was pretty much like either that or you're putting a ghetto blaster in the middle of your jam space. Like, we like there was some drum programming I did. In fact, I could go upstairs and show you the drum machine I used to program on. It's hilarious.
We may have to do that after this is done. Yeah.
yeah. But for example, most of the songs we did with Scott were kind of songs we'd all written together, like in a practice space, but some of the songs I just wrote on my own. So one of them was the song My Heroine. So I had recorded this on I think it was called a Boss BR8, I want to say. It was an 8-track machine that you recorded onto zip disks. I don't know if you guys remember zip disks.
Oh, I do. I had something that looked probably similar to this. It was not made by, I think it may have been like an early Zoom thing, but I think I can picture like what you're talking about from like what they look like. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, like an old style, like Tascam, like 4-track. It was like the modern one. And instead of cassette tapes, it used zip disks. So zip disks were like, a floppy disk.
100 megabytes, which was insane.
And these were like 100 megabytes. It was like, wow. Yeah. And oh my God, it was such funny technology. So yeah, you literally used to pop this thing in. You had 8 tracks to work with. This one was cool because it actually had like a built-in like guitar sound, like Boss, like so I literally just, recorded my drum machine drums that I'd made on this Boss separate unit drum machine, which is such a pain in the ass to program. And I like recorded that in, have to like wait for the thing to record and track it like stereo and everything and wait the 3.5 minutes. And then, I'd record, guitar, bass, vocal. And I don't know, I think then I'm out of tracks, right? And that was what I did for like the My Heroine demo. And it's around somewhere. I mean, it's pretty bad. But the song is pretty close. The song didn't change much. That was definitely one of the worst sounding demos of the batch. So bad, in fact, that I think the rest of the guys couldn't see through it and they didn't like the song. And it almost got cut from the record, actually.
I thought I had heard you say that at one point somewhere, which I love, which is it, like, I mean, I don't love that it almost got cut, but because I think you guys are probably in hindsight glad that it didn't either. It served y'all well. So that's actually like a really interesting testament. And the reason why we always ask, because every band has a different way of communicating ideas and brings things that essentially are trying to do the same thing, which is just document the idea for the song and get it across, convey it to, whoever's in the driver's seat from a production capacity or things like that. And sometimes it's like, one person will bring it to the other. So were you bringing this, to the band, and what does it look like, especially in a band in that way? It's like, you've got some incredible players. Also, full disclosure that when we toured with y'all, it's always, I mean, if you haven't seen these guys play live yet, then you're missing out. It's an incredible rock show. And that was one thing that was one thing that we were always like, Jesus, like so tight, and the parts themselves just executed. It's always really interesting. And I love this because, I mean, we always think about how, whenever anybody asks from a Wonder Years standpoint, it's like every song is different. But that's such a true thing where there are times where I'm like, no, like you're just not getting it. Like, it is a great song, I promise you. And then sometimes I'm always just like, even in some ways, it's like that's how you were like, okay, well, next time around, I'm going to make sure the demo's a little bit more fleshed out so they totally get it. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there like 15 years later and trying to call yourself a producer. You know what I mean? Not that I know anything about that, but like, so like this is like an incredible thing because you're doing that. What were with any other songs, were there different methodologies that did you like, because that seems like you had an idea for the arrangement overall, that you put some time into the old-fashioned way, so to speak.
Well, that song, I'd had the riff, like the opening riff, for years. Like I probably had the opening riff from even when the first album like was coming out or around then, right? So I really knew it was something special, and I didn't want to just like shit out the rest of the song. So I like really took a lot of time with that song, like going back, saying, okay, what do these parts need to be? What should happen? I remember the one part I really wrestled with was the bridge because, it was very in fashion at the time to just put in like a breakdown, like a chug part, with screaming. But I felt like even at the time I was like, I don't know, is this going to be like a flash in the pan thing? Like maybe putting in like going to the major chord and, and putting in like a more soaring kind of bridge would be like a better kind of decision for the song from a song perspective, rather than it just being like chugging on E, in a cool pattern for 30 seconds, So there was things like that I definitely thought about for that song, and for the most part, I think it stayed the same, but I think it honestly mostly stayed the same because like nobody really believed in it. So everyone was like, you can just have your weird song and like whatever. You know what I mean? Eventually, because I kind of fought for it, and everyone was like, okay, it is what it is. Like, we don't need to try to make it better. It's just, it is what it is. So, and even Cameron was like that too. He's like, I don't know if this like fits with the rest of the record. And it's like, well, maybe it doesn't fit with the rest of the record because it's the best song, you know?
Because it shows the weakness of
Right.
all the others. Yeah. Oh my God.
and I don't mean that. I remember just that specific conversation. And, you know, we went into the studio too. This is another thing. Like, we went in with 11 songs and we recorded 11 songs and we put out 11 songs. Like, we didn't have some bands are like, yeah, we like recorded 50 songs and we tracked 30. And it's like, no, we wrote 11 and we tracked 11 and we put it out 11.
I feel like that specifically is much more common, I'll say in our world, but I mean, like Wonder Years, very, very much so. Like, we were always like, we signed to Hopeless and they're just like, you maybe write a couple more. And it's just like, no, like conceptually, like the record starts here and then these are all the things we want to say. And then this is the last song. It's like, you know, this is the record. Like, they're just like, well, what if you write it? It's like, no. And again, I think it maybe is a singer thing. You've had Soup on Lead Singer Syndrome. And I'm sure y'all have talked about this back and forth over time too, where he's just like, I don't want to just go kind of like shit out another song worth of lyrics if it doesn't like in any way, you know, I want it to like connect and feel like it's part of this record, you know, and it's real. I think it's really hard. And I think for that reason, it's why, you know, bands like yours and in that way probably do are just like, no, these are the songs we feel good about, you know, like we don't want to just like, you know, sometimes that's good. And some songwriters can do it and just keep going and going and going. But I think there's something to be said about like, hey, really knowing what feels good and refining it in a way to be like, there's a reason we spent time with these, you know?
Totally. I mean, I back then I had a very strong vision too. Like, I kind of knew like going in exactly like this is going to be the first song. And then it's like, I had this all like in my head. I knew what the record was going to be and it came out pretty much how I wanted it to be, you know? And that's always the goal, I guess, you know? And Cameron I think he was the perfect producer for us at the time, because I always wonder what would have happened if we worked with David Bendeth. Like, would he have changed all the songs? Would it have kind of sucked the soul out of it a little bit from what we wanted? Would it just have been better? Would it have been more commercially viable and successful? Like, you know, would I have 100 guitars behind me instead of just 10, you know? I mean, you know, like you think about those kinds of things, especially when like literally right after we fired him, we're like, oh, he's like, he was like every record doing like knocking it out of the park at every turn. And we're like, shit, did we fuck up?
I guess that Riot record that you did for some band called Paramore worked out okay. Like things
Right.
like that.
Although that was like still like 2 years later after that, but
Right. No, totally. Exactly. And no doubt it would have been different, but that's a great, like the choices were all like instinctual and all really did pan out in a great way for the record, you know? So,
Shane, real fast, like on some of the other songs, whereas like My Heroine like is I feel like it's an awesome story like behind that whole track, but like is there any other track that like jumps out that like has like that, like I guess like the band was like really juiced on and like you were just like and it like completely flipped for you?
Yeah, I'd say there's a song, it's actually the song right after My Heroine, it's called Always and Never. It's like track 8. And we had the instrumental done, and I had no idea what to do on the song. Like right up to the 11th hour. Like I'm talking, we've tracked vocals on like probably 8 of the songs, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this one. And like I said, we came in with 11 songs, and I was like, okay, we only have to give Victory 10, like as per our contract. Like if one's gonna get cut, it's gonna be Always and Never. That was my mindset. So I remember I was in the vocal booth and I think I had the chorus done, but I didn't know what to do in the verses. And Cameron was like, why don't you just scream? So I kind of just took some like random kind of ramblings that I'd written on the bottom of the page, and I screamed it, and I was like, maybe this does kind of work. And I'd say, we just played this record, for our 20th anniversary. We played the record in full, most of the shows. And it's one of my favorites to play, for sure. It's got a really cool energy. It's really fast. It's really fun. And I can't imagine the record without that song now. But I was, in 2005, when we were recording that thing, I was very ready to part ways with it.
I love that. Let's get into the recording of it. This was, like you said, the first time y'all didn't do it in Canada. You guys left home. You did this with Cam in LA and stayed out there. So what kind of differences did that present? And especially we'll get into the studios that you tracked it at, because it's a pretty legendary spot.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. So yeah, that's the thing. We'd made only one record, and it was a weird process. It was kind of with our local guy. So, we were going home every night and living normal life and stuff. And, so this was okay, we're going to California to make a record. 100% of our focus is on this. So we actually recorded most of the record in Santa Ana, and we stayed at the Oakwoods in Costa Mesa, right by South Coast Plaza. If anyone knows, it's massive mall. So we lived there, and I think it was really the first time we'd ever lived together or stayed together when we weren't playing shows, right? So it was kind of an interesting thing too. And our booking was, we were supposed to have a 3-bedroom, I guess, but they only had a 2-bedroom. So Paul and Bill shared a bed. And we were like, you got to keep the rhythm section locked in,
That's right. They have to be on the same plane, like a nice married couple. Yeah.
Exactly. So they shared a bed, and Josh and Neil shared a room but had separate beds. And I was I got a rollaway bed, and I actually was able to push it into this walk-in closet, just fit. So I literally slept in a closet when we made the record. I didn't have a light.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, look at you. Oh, lead singer royal treatment over here, gets his own room. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, I can't say that's the first time I've heard of a booking horror story. That actually seems like it could have been far worse. But yeah, close quarters.
We were fine. Honestly, we didn't care. We didn't complain. We were fine. We were just so excited to be in California, especially I think we were recording the record in February or March, where it's freezing cold at home. We were this is amazing, palm trees and all this, because we'd only probably toured to California a couple times by, at that point too. So it was really special. And then of course we recorded the drums at Capitol. So, the most legendary building in Los Angeles, and we're recording in the studio in the basement. We walk in, I think we were there for maybe 3 or 4 days, and we came in the first day, and fucking Bon Jovi is recording strings in the studio next door. It's wild,
So, and we've talked about a bunch of stuff like this. It's you go out to LA, and if you get a chance to be at one of those studios like that. So we did Sister Cities at Sunset Sound, and it was the same thing where you walk in and you're just I think Boz Scaggs was in Studio B one day where I was Boz Scaggs. I was I don't think my dad will ever be prouder of me than to know that I'm in the same studio as Boz Scaggs for a day, even though I had nothing to do with it. There's a Fall Out Boy track, Heaven's Gate. We were out there shooting in the court playing basketball, and Andy walks out and is do you guys want to? I was what are you doing here? Just we're doing drums for new Fall Out Boy records. You guys want to come and stomp clap on it? We're yeah, okay, threw some cans on it. And it was the chorus of, what would later become Give Me a Boost Over Heaven's Gate, which ironically enough, we were in tracking a song on our record that would be called Heaven's Gate. Very weird. But either way, it's so then I'm doing the research for this record, right? And I come across that little gem. I was oh man, I love that, because it's so perfect about some of these legendary studios and how you walk and you're wait, what the hell? And it's such a different juxtaposition from doing a record at home with your guys, right? Very comfortable, very easy, but also just in a way kind of elevates the scale of things. And sometimes that can be a great thing, and sometimes that can be a really stressful, nerve-wracking thing. And I was curious where that landed for you guys, what that part of the experience.
I think we were just pretty overwhelmed. There's like pictures of Frank Sinatra like standing in the place we're standing. Like it was just really surreal. It didn't feel like we belonged at all, and I don't know. We just went in and we were in, Bon Jovi was in like Studio A. Studio A was like they were recording an orchestra in there. Like the room was like insane. And then we were in Studio B, which is like still the best studio I'd ever seen, And I don't know. We just went in, we did our songs, and we recorded the drums to tape, which at the time was pretty standard. We'd recorded our whole first record. We did the drums to tape as well, and that was what you did. So it's a lot of pressure on a drummer when you're recording to tape. You can't really fix anything. You can't really change anything. But Paul was dialed in, and he banged out the drums relatively quickly. I mean, if anybody was going to be nervous, it was him. Because the only thing we were there to do really was drums. We did the rest of the record at Cameron's, like smaller studio, still pretty nice studio in Santa Ana. So, yeah, I mean, it was a really cool experience being there, and I'll never forget it. But yeah, I don't know. We came to play, and Paul's if you know him, and I know you do, he's a serious dude, and he's straight edge and straight laced, and he's not ever gonna take a minute off. So.
No. He is a certified ripper through and through, and is all business when needs to be, for sure. Man, I love that. Dude, drums to tape in a studio like that, incredible. Also, just as a side note, I did some quick digging, and it seems like what Bon Jovi, I wish there was some way to confirm this, I would have to imagine that an album called Have a Nice Day came out in September of 2005, and there are 2 tracks on that record, one called Wildflower and one called Welcome to Wherever You Are, that both had string arrangement on it. So it's maybe 1 or 2 of those for anybody that really wants to dig real deep to the time and place type stuff.
That's a deep one.
That's how we do it here on the record process.
I have told that story many times, and I have never thought to look.
This is Casey's side podcast. It's Casey's Jovi Deep Dives.
Yeah, dives for Jovi. Yeah. The fact that so doing the drums in this way too, and obviously, like we talked about, getting the vibe and energy right for a band. And I'm curious, you talked about doing some demos, initially, that were full band demos in the studio for these. I'm curious because pre-production for like a high energy band like yourselves, right, is really about getting that natural, you're putting your rhythm section together in the same bed, right? It's all about getting that energy and glue locked in from a performative standpoint and working off of each other just like you do live. So from a pre-production standpoint, also because specifically on one song, I'm curious about what the approach was for putting down those guys, and from a drum standpoint, what did he track to from like tempo maps and like a click? Because I know how we've done it, and then I was listening back through the record, and I think it's "Smile in Your Sleep" that has like a real retardando in the bridge where it kind of falls off a cliff. And I was like, man, that just feels like a band's just doing that just together in a rehearsal space, but it's like the tightest thing. And I'm curious like how moments like that were done, or if there was a specific approach to it.
Yeah. When we first got to California, we didn't go to Capitol right away. We did pre-production at the smaller studio. And I think we spent about a week. We could play through pretty much all the songs, pretty well. And Cameron didn't have a ton of notes, really. The notes that he did have were really good, and some of the changes, but nothing got like too ripped apart. Yeah, with the tempos and stuff, yeah, I think we just figured them out there. I mean, we wouldn't have really had an idea exactly before. But, I think one thing was like we were trying to do more of that. Like we were trying to do like, okay, if this song is at 120, well, maybe the breakdown should be at like 110.
Right.
Or like 115. So it like sounds heavier, like we were like saying stuff like that. And Cameron was like, that's nonsense. Just make it one tempo. Like everybody just makes a song one tempo. And he kind of fought us on some stuff, which I'm kind of glad he did now, because I do think it might've just sounded kind of weird and awkward if we'd changed tempos, like dropped something by 2-4 BPM just for the sake of doing it. I know there are times when, people do that for whatever reason, but Yeah, but like with something like Smile in Your Sleep, like that's an intentional one, or the song after Always and Never has a few tempo changes. And I think that stuff came about more because of the way we were writing. Like we were writing in a practice space without a click track. And then when it came time to like, okay, what's the tempo? Like, let's figure it out. Then we realized like, oh shit, these parts are like radically different tempos, which these days doesn't happen as much, just the way that we put together songs. You know, there's like always a click track from the very beginning now, but we didn't play to a click track live until probably at least 5-6 years after that. So we didn't even play to a click track live for a long time. Yeah, it was just kind of like figuring out what seemed natural. And like we had one of these Tama Rhythm Watch drum like metronome machines, and like I would be tapping the tempo as we played and be like, yeah, it's about 192, 190, yeah, 192. Oh, we'll call it 191, you know. And then we would just go with that. And then if we recorded the pre-production demos, and then we were like, yeah, that's too fast or that's too slow. And I do think the songs on the record are pretty fast, but I'm kind of glad they are too, because I think the record after the songs are too slow.
I love that you just said that, because I will, this many years later, listen back to like old Wonder Years stuff. I'm like, what the hell? This fast? Who let us do that? Like, and then I'll just like call Steve and be like, Steve, are you kidding me, dude? Like, he was like, I wanted it faster. And I was like, oh God. I was like, you animal. But at the same time, I'm just like, that was where we were. That was where our spirit was. And it felt right. I was like, you just got to trust yourself. You got to trust you got to trust yourself and trust your collective team to be like, yep, we're all in on this. This feels great. Right. And it's just this living, breathing organism.
Better too fast than too slow. That's what I say. But
honestly, I'm clipping that. That's going at the front of this episode, dude. That's gold. That's truly gold. We can maybe just stop now. I don't know, Tom. That feels like that kind of puts it right where it needs to be. But no, dude. But I love that.
I have a couple questions. You brought up that like Cam didn't do a lot of changes, or like didn't recommend like a lot of changes. But was there like one that like really like stood out that it, like was like, oh yeah, this is it. Okay, this is cool.
It's I wouldn't say so, really. I mean, the one that I remember is he wanted to put a snare roll in Smile in Your Sleep before the like when the last chorus comes back in, because before we just had to like but and it was like, I can't believe we just had a but like that was such an obvious change that we didn't see. But no, like not really. Like to be honest, he didn't really change too much. I remember there was a couple times when he's like, yeah, chorus is just not good enough. And I was like, really? So I'd like go back and I'd like listen to the song and be like, I think this chorus is great. And I'd come back the next day, I'd be like, I think the chorus is great. He'd be like, yeah, it's good. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'd be like, okay, we'll just
keep like, yeah, that was just me trying to fuck with you and get in your head specifically, Shane.
It wasn't though. I think he just kind of realized, like, I don't know. I think he was just trying to make the song better, and then kind of realized it was already pretty good. But I don't know. You know, it happens with every record where you write a song and then like you just change it and change it and change it, and then it ends up being exactly the same as it was at the start. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Like that happens all the time with our band. And I've talked to enough people that say the same thing, right? Because sometimes there's just a certain magic that you get when you first put something together.
Dude, I would be one of those people that you would potentially talk to and say the same thing. I feel like we will try every possible thing, good, bad, ugly, and then be like, you know what? It feels like the first thing that we intuitively did was great. We just needed to spend this extra like 3 hours making sure we weren't just phoning it in, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about having a group of people in a space like this, being in a band versus being like a solo artist, right? Going out on your own, writing a song from concept to execution. You have this like innate, almost like filtering process where if an idea gets past everybody in the room and gets everybody to sign off on it and feel good, you know there's got to be something there. Because you know, like, well, normally right. I know if it was like too vanilla or too pop, I know my drummer would hate it. Or if it was like too stock and the progression was weird, I know my other guitar player is going to say something about it. If the melody or the lyric was off, I know it would be bothering so-and-so. Like, and then if you get to the end, and I mean, this is kind of exactly what you're saying, where you're like, hey, we did it. we did the pre-pro demo and we were like, this all rips, like, because you had to go at it before you even came in to do it with Cam. And there's a lot of, I think that trust sometimes it makes it harder. We don't always get along with our bandmates. We don't have to tread down there. I'm sure there were plenty of disagreements along the way as you try things, right? But
sure, all the time.
The point is that you get there, right? And there's enough trust to be like, hey, if this is still a thing that I feel like one of my guys is going to die on a hill about, okay, let me re-listen or try and see what's happening. And sometimes there is, or sometimes Cam comes back the next day. It's like, honestly, I rethought it. It's great.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like weird too, though. Like I think back to some of like where we were in our headspace, because we still didn't really realize like we're a professional band. Like this is a career. Like those kind of words. Like if anyone said career or professional, we would just like shrug it off and be like, "What do you mean?" Like for example, during pre-production, Josh and Neil went to a wedding in Vegas for like 2 days. Like just we had a week and they like left for 2 days, and for those days like I spent like working on lyrics and Paul and Bill, like there was some bass drum demos that they like did. Like I can't believe that we let that fly, And then Cameron had to instill a rule that no one was allowed to smoke weed until it got dark out, because he thought that Josh and Neil were smoking too much weed like during the day, So like we were kids, like as much as like we were poring over certain things, a lot of it was like, I don't know, it's a cool part, let's go, and I think we were in a mindset where I knew what we wanted, I felt good about it, and I think we were like in the same space as like our fan base, we were still young enough that we kind of just knew what kind of record to make, and then we made it, and I knew it was pretty good, and it did really well, it was really popular, and people still, we still play it, we played the whole thing on Sunday, so people still care about it. So there was something there that was like hard to explain, that you can't analyze it as much as like maybe some of our newer records, but it's still a special thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think, short of maybe saying, breaking it down to almost seemingly make the whole discussion end of this show seem irrelevant, because sometimes it is, in the sense of like, you're just talking about instinct. You're just like making music. Like, what do you want to hear? You're making shit that you want to hear, that you'd want to listen to. Right. And I love this. I'll go back to, do you remember a band called Energy?
No, I don't.
Okay. They like a Boston band, like a couple of our good friends, like they sounded, it was very much AFI worship, as their singer Tank would be happy to tell you. Anyway, their guitar player, I may get this mixed up, so if they end up listening, I'm not even 100% sure it was them. But anyway, was a very like creative individual, and I think at some point we were playing a show, and someone asked him, "Yeah, dude, like, what's your favorite band?" And the answer was, "Well, it's Energy." What? Your band is your favorite band? He's like, "Yeah, well." If it wasn't, why would I be in it? And in that moment, I don't even know if he was fucking with us, 100% serious. Either way, it's kind of like this many years later, that still sticks with us. We still laugh about it. But at the same time, I remember it in this moment where I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of as simple as just make shit that you'd want to listen to. And you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And so I love that you brought that up, Shane, because, like we can sit here and try to like, run circles around, and sometimes we do, and sometimes it's very fun, but there's also like a beauty in like just acknowledging the time and place of like, hey, just go with it, like don't try and overthink what it'll be like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, or whatever. Just be in the moment. And it feels like that's exactly where you guys were, even though it was a very different situation, from the first record to this record.
Yeah, no, it was a very different situation. And I think another really important thing was just how much Cameron pushed me as a singer. With the first record, I don't know, I'd sing something a couple times and it was like, okay, cool. Next verse or whatever. And Cameron, it was like, do it again. And I was like, I'd never experienced that before. And now it's like, of course, I'll sing a line 50 times if I have to get it. That's normal, right? Well, maybe not 50 times, but you know what I mean? Like you do it as long as it takes, right? And I remember just hating Cameron the first maybe 5-6 days of tracking until he was playing it back, and I was like, oh shit, it sounds like I can actually sing. So, but that was a big learning experience too, I think, for all of us to figure out that, you just got to do what it takes to get the proper performances. It's like, it isn't just about like, okay, you practice in a band and then like, okay, you're doing your best, it's good enough. It's like, no, it's not good enough. Like, it's not good enough. It has to be the best you could ever do and then some. That was important.
It really was, dude. And this is what I think, to just restate this, again, in a similar way, doing this record, and it sounds like it just makes you a better band, doing it, working with people that have a different threshold for like quality control in a way, and like have a different, have expectations. And anytime you get in the room with people that are, doing those things, it's kind of like surround yourself with, a room full of people that are smarter than you. You're going to end up smarter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just naturally you're going to be like, oh, that's where the bar can be. I didn't know that. Right. It's like, right. I remember like when you go see bands as a kid, you're used to like playing local shows. All bands are, whatever, like everybody's, can like half play some instruments. And then you see a touring band come through that's like toured nationally and is like actually doing it, and you're just like, oh my God, they blow everybody out of the water. I didn't know that a band could be that tight. And then you go see, and that's really the difference of is slowly like progressing as an artist, as a performer, as a songwriter in all of those different disciplines and avenues, because you hear like, oh my God, I didn't know that a song could be that well constructed and written and thought through.
Yeah. And so much of it doesn't have anything to do with ability. It has to do with mindset, and it's like the same way that, I don't know, like think about how 30 years ago, the, Olympic or the world record for 100 meter was like 9.9 seconds, or whatever. I don't know what it was. Right. And now like the slowest guy in the Olympics runs 9.9.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because like people that kept getting faster. So someone's like, well, if he can run it in 9.85, I can run it in 9.85. Like it's weird, how that kind of stuff, like stuff tends to get like better and better. And like pitchers throw faster and faster, in baseball and whatever it is, like guys are shooting more 3-pointers, like making more of them. It isn't just, they're practicing more. It isn't just that. They are probably, right? And there's probably all kinds of science behind it as well. But it's also a mindset. And I really believe that really comes to play in music too. Like, look at these bands, like, you think about like the punk rock, skate punk wars of like what drummer can play the fastest, It's the same thing. Right? Like, oh shit, well that band plays that fast. Why can't we play that fast?
So well said, Shane. Dude, this has been such an awesome chat. I can't thank you enough. So with all that being said and all that backstory on that record that y'all have just wrapped up walking through and replaying and everything with all your fans, what's now as we turn, in 2022, what's ahead? What's the mindset in 2022 for you and the band, and that's coming up that maybe you can reveal as this will, here we are in spring of 22.
Yeah. Well, a couple things about Discovering the Waterfront I forgot to say that might be interesting to your listeners too. Cameron mixed the record twice. He mixed the record on his own API, and then he heard that Under Oath, They're Only Chasing Safety was mixed on an SSL. So he like went and remixed it on an SSL. And I don't remember which one we used.
So you don't know which version you used?
I believe we used the API in the end, but maybe not. It might have been the SSL. Cameron would know. But I don't remember which one we used. But that was crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I got to maybe chase him down. You know what's funny? I straight up have that like big bold in my notes, and I can't believe, shame on me and good on you, sir, for bringing that up. Because Tom and I I'm sure when we wrapped up would be like, no. But that's brilliant. And also that goes to show that he cared, man. This is what he was already like, nope, I can do better. We can do better, right? With like, unsolicited, and that shows a caliber of a person. And that shows that, again, like you said, with where things could have gone early on, selecting and going the right place and find, it's like that you ended up with the person that you were meant to, because they, even at the end, were that invested in it and cared that much for all the right reasons. Now, it's not that, who knows what it would have been like, with somebody else, but that's such an incredible, beautiful way to have wrapped that up, and such an interesting thing to know too, especially like a record's not done when it's like tracked and like whatever. It's like, we're still at, as I sit here talking through, we're halfway through like the mix, phase of making a Wonder Years record right now. And it's incredible, but also like it can get very granular and detail oriented sometimes. And we've had things remixed, remastered, just like that. And it's not always the person at the helm that says, no, I want to do this again.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Casey, I mean, you got 6 members in your band, but you got a lot of producers and you got a lot of creative people in your band too. That must be hard sometimes when everybody's got an opinion.
We got too many, dude. Well, I'll say this, man. We definitely have too many drummers, because there's like 3 of them. Michael is the one true stallion behind the kit, but Nick and Matt can also just shred on drums, and it's wholly unfair. So watching them try to dissect like rhythm parts and like have their like air drum off, I'm just like, you guys I love you. You gotta stop though. I gotta go.
No, I just picture you guys, someone being like, well, you got to put a 421 on that tom. And it's like, I think 421 sound like shit. Like just these kind of like conversations that inevitably must just, because everyone cares,
Well, and exactly. And we all know that it's because everyone cares. And I love that. So even when we have the knockdown drag out, like, fine, like then I don't even care. Then we won't even do this song, like whatever. It's because everybody does care. And we all know that. And we're grateful for the care. But yeah, it's actually for that reason, dude, that like interestingly enough, you say that, we have, a couple people that do in the band have begun to explore more and more the engineering and production side of things. And it's actually that reason that we even now more than ever still need to go outside to find that objectivity in a producer and someone that is at the helm, so that we have like an innate tiebreaker. So it's like, we can all have our thoughts, but hey, let this person champion it, and it will end up inevitably in a place that satisfies all of us. And so that none of us are ever being asked to wear too many hats at one time, so we can all live as just band members in that time and place while we're doing those records that we found very, very helpful to us. But I know you in the same way have like creatives and people that care in that way, yourself included, about now you've made so many records, and it's still great. And I'm sure you still look to other people for that kind of objectivity and feedback, even this many years later,
Yeah, 100%.
But
100%. It's very, very important.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
But thank you for sharing that last little tidbit. That's so wholly perfect, and also such a great way, such like a little like 11th hour moment for the record as well, before it went out the door. That's brilliant. So yes, on that note, what is the rest of the year and moving forward look like for Silverstein?
We've released 2 songs, singles so far. Bankrupt and It's Over, and feeling really good about those jams. We got some more in the pipeline. I think people know it's coming.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some new music for sure. And what's really exciting is a tour just got announced that's going to be Beartooth, Silverstein, The Devil Wears Prada, and Era going out together, which is a massive, massive bill. Playing some cool cities too, like not just the standard places everyone expects, which of course pisses people off, just like you guys not playing Toronto. People are like, what do you mean you're not playing Chicago? What do you
right?
What do you mean you're not playing Dallas? But it's cool too, because there's some cities we've literally never played before. So, so it'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll be going to Europe for festivals. Hopefully COVID doesn't cause any issues for that. Who knows? But yeah, we'll be touring all through the year, and we've got some jams coming too. I can't talk too much more about that, but people should be keeping an ear to the ground for for some new Silverstein music.
Look out for it, because full disclosure, Tom and I know who y'all worked with and who did it. It's going to be incredible.
Oh, I can talk about that. Yeah, it's Mr. Sam Guyana who produced our last full-length record, and he's done, some of our re-record stuff, and he's mixed our live streams and our live records and everything. So he's our boy.
He's a beast. Yeah.
Yeah, he's incredible, and I think he's one of the best engineers, one of the best mixers, and I mean, in terms of, production, being a producer, I think he's really found his own with some of the new stuff he's done for us. So it's really, really cool to have him at the helm, and just seeing like how far he's come since he was like 13 playing in a local band with my friend who was 27. Like it was super weird. That's when I met him. He was like a little kid playing in a band with guys in their mid 20s. So that's just what he's always done. He's always been an overachiever like that. So it's he's a special guy.
Well, we look so forward to seeing the rest of that see the light of day. Thank you so much for sharing that. When does that? We'll see when this episode is actually released, but I have a feeling that you all may be on that tour. What are the dates of that Beartooth tour?
I believe it starts March 25th and runs into early May. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a lot of fun, and Beartooth, some of our best friends, the whole Silvertooth vibes we got going on. So it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and I think that's a tour not to be missed. So we're excited.
No, I would wholeheartedly agree. Well, we so much appreciate you spending the time with us and chatting about this. We look forward to everything Silverstein. And like I said before, if you somehow have not seen the Steen live, I don't know what you're doing. You got to go do it. And that tour next year, wherever it might be, is a perfect opportunity to do so. So Shane, thank you again, buddy. And we will talk to you very soon, I'm sure.
Yes. Casey, Tom, thank you so much for having me, and love what you're doing with the podcast. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Of course, bud.
Oh, thank you very much. So I really hope you enjoyed that one. Shane is such a good friend. We've spent so much time with those guys, and they are some truly genuine human beings and absurdly talented. If you couldn't already tell from not only the record we just talked about, but all of their others. Some of the incredible things that we touched on as well, I hope stuck with you. The idea of what it was like for a band to be recording a record away from home for the first time and immersing themselves in that process. The way that an environment can inspire performances, and also just working with someone that you get along with and have a really solid connection with, especially as a singer in Shane's case, can do wonders for leaning into different creative methods and feeling motivated and inspired to try new things or extend what they're potentially capable of. Also, if you have not yet seen Silverstein perform live, you should know they are an incredibly tight machine, and the energy that they curate from song to song is unparalleled. And I think talking with Shane here about how they pulled that dynamic out of the band and actually use the band as the guide for any click tracks or tempo maps instead of forcing themselves to stick to the grid is a really important takeaway for a lot of bands that have something special and want to get that across and make sure that the unique points of their collective flow can shine on records. And finally, as a thank you for sticking to the end of another episode with us, our partners at IZOTOPE are giving away a free year of their music production suite bundle. These plugins are incredible, and all you have to do is go to the show notes and follow a few quick steps. To sign up, just leave us a review and join our mailing list so we can get a hold of you when we pick a winner at the end of this month. And that's all for now, so we will catch you next week on another episode of The Record Process.